Hello. Welcome to another live stream of the Are You Green podcast recording. It is so exciting to be able to come to you guys live on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I also just started an Instagram account for the podcast. It's called Are You Green Podcast. So very easy to remember and to look up. It's been awesome so far because I've gotten messages from listeners, and it's just such a great way for me to communicate with you guys. So as always, since you're watching on YouTube, be sure to check out the podcast. It's available on Apple, on Google, Spotify, anywhere you listen. Most of my listeners do come from Apple Podcasts, though, which is interesting because I actually use a Spotify app to record. But anyways, it's out on all these platforms. So be sure to check it out. And with all of that said, let's go ahead and start the recording today. Hello, traders and friends. Welcome to the Are You Green podcast. Today is Wednesday, November 18th, and it has been a day full of mixed news. That can either be really good for the market, or sometimes it can push and pull because it's so mixed and then we're not going anywhere, which is kind of more of the case of today. The SPY opened at 360.98. And because it did have that rally yesterday into the close, this opening level and the levels that it's at right now, I think it was around 359. It is in the red, so slightly in the red today. The XLK technology sector is open today at 121.48. It closed yesterday at 121.69. So not a lot of change there. But when I did most recently look at the indicator, it was slightly red for the day as well. Because we have seen these two red days in a row, I just want to emphasize that they're only red by a very small amount. The market for the S&P 500 is actually up for the year. So we are still, growing, and, we're having some great gains this year. So just because you have a couple of red days, does not mean that we have, anything serious coming anytime soon. I feel like, all the dramatic changes with the election are behind us. So the market's just kind of trying to find its footing. What everybody wants to know, are you green in my personal accounts? And yes, I am green today. And it's very interesting because I am still holding some intense trades. So I have a couple of swing trades that are very long-term because I know that my target, and I'm still holding on to those. So an example is AYX. That's a long-term swing trade I'm in, as well as BABA. So these trades are a little bit in the red, and I was really surprised that my account was green. But I do have a few swing trades that are green as well, but they're not at my selling point. So I'm going to continue to hold those and stick to my trading plan. Coming up, I really want to dive into the Norwegian cruise line news, as well as what's happening with the effects of the news for the vaccine. Some, interesting things to look at with the airlines, as well as diving into what this intense wave of COVID is doing with New York and rural areas around the country. So stay tuned, and when we come back, we'll dive into the news. Awesome. So it does take me a second, obviously, to build the podcast as I'm recording this. And if you guys have any questions when you're watching this later, please feel free to comment. And you can also send me a voice question on my Instagram account. And what that is going to do is it's going to allow me to play the voice recording during the podcast, so I can kind of respond to you like we're having a real conversation. So be sure to, send me a quick, audio clipping if you do want a chance to be featured in the podcast. Let's go ahead and record the next segment. So diving right into the news, I wanted to focus on the Norwegian cruise line, NCLH. For those of you who are following me on Instagram, by the way, it's Are You Green Podcast. please follow, DM me. I love hearing from you guys. So I did post about the news this morning asking, what we're going to do. Does this news make us buy, keep, sell? What's the plan with Norwegian Cruise Line? So first of all, to keep in mind with what happened is they basically have put out more shares in the market in order to raise funds. So it was a pretty big offering. They did this after the market closed yesterday. So that's why I didn't, get to comment on it during yesterday's podcast. But I did, watch this off the top of the hour, in the trading hour, to see if there might be an opportunity to buy. The thing to keep in mind is that the company put out 40 million shares at a price of $20.80. So I definitely don't want to buy higher than that price, because the company is basically evaluating themselves there and saying that's the cost of the share. Like that's, a fair cost. So I definitely don't want to buy higher than that. And in fact, I don't even really want to buy at that level. I want to wait until there is a really good dip on the stock. At the end of the day, the reason why Norwegian Cruise Line did this is to raise money for the company. So they're trying to, raise $832 million. It's an insane number to think about. And, they need the money. Obviously, the cruises have been very difficult. They are now working with the CDC to make sure that the cruises are set to go in 2021 and they're following regulations and all sorts of stuff. So, with all of these changes, plus making, the boat cleaner, which is crazy because it should be cleaned before the pandemic. But that is costing them. So that's a big reason why they wanted to put their shares out. And the fact that they are wanting more money to put into the company is not always a bad thing. It's not like we don't understand why this happened, because we're all living through COVID every freaking day. So we know, what it was, the cause behind doing this, and raising this capital. So I don't think, there's any reason to panic, which again is why I'm looking to, buy it at a good price for a swing trade. So right now my buy offer on NCLH is $20.25 per share. I'm not going to buy anything above that, but I am hoping for tomorrow there to be a big dip. I can get some orders filled and then sell it for a couple of points. Even, if the stock does continue to go down in the long term, I do think for those long-term investors that it is a good stock. They have a lot of, this cash now, and they seem, very dedicated to being safe and reopening. So let me know what you think if you are holding NCLH long term. The other news to report on is more of the vaccine news. As we talked about on yesterday's episode, this new Pfizer growth today, because they came out with, oh my gosh, sorry guys, my connection with going live on YouTube is saying it's a little unstable. So sorry for those of you watching the live stream. And I'm sorry because I mentioned it in the podcast. I'm going to continue. So basically, day 2, recovering from the vaccine news, is really starting to set in. Now people are realizing that the vaccine is not going to get a chance to go to that many people. We don't see a stimulus deal coming. In my opinion, that's not going to come until at least the end of January, February. And we have huge COVID hotspots in the United States, some in very rural areas like South Dakota and North Dakota. I mean, they are just really feeling it right now. So please wear a mask if you're in that area of the states and listening. But basically, all of this other news with COVID surge did kind of bring down the effects of the vaccine news, and people are already over it. We did see some big gains towards the end of the trading day for some of the stay-at-home stocks again. What caused that? New York. So New York decided that they are closing the schools, and that immediately had a 3% pop on Zoom and a pop up on Peloton, PTON. It's just really interesting to see how reactive the markets are right now, that news came out and immediately you saw a pop in the stock. And those are two stocks that I am going to be watching for tomorrow, to possibly do a quick day trade or a quick or a swing trade over the next week or so. So we'll see what is to come with the stay-at-home stocks. In just a moment, we'll dive into my personal trades. I'll be honest, today was kind of a slow day for me with the personal trades. I didn't see anything that I was really married to. And at the end of the day, being a trader, you have to make tough decisions, because any trade that you enter into is going to reduce the amount of capital, and you would hate to enter in large to a trade that might not be so great, that you're kind of feeling iffy about. And then when a setup comes that follows your strategy that's perfect, you don't have enough funds to really profit from that. So, I don't necessarily enter in a new trade every single day, and that's perfectly okay. But I am excited about the swing trade I started today. It's ATVI, and we're just going to take a second break, and then we'll dive into my personal accounts. It's really interesting because obviously when I'm doing this, there's no music or anything because I add it later in the podcast. And I'm kind of thinking, that it might be interesting to see what it would be like if I recorded live with music. So thank you guys for watching and tuning into this YouTube channel. As the podcast starts to take off, I just want to be able to offer more content and make a more personal, connection with the listeners. So I thought that this would be, a good way by doing this live stream. So let's dive right into my personal account. For my personal accounts, I was excited to be green today across the board, so across all of my accounts. And I did go ahead and start a swing trade with ATVI. So this is Activision Blizzard. They are a gaming company. Because we do have Christmas coming up, I feel really confident that this stock is going to continue to have volume and interest. So today I did go ahead and buy it off the top of the open. My average is 75.71. Because it popped right after that pivot, I did consider selling it for a day trade, but I do think that this stock is still trading much lower than it should. But pulling up the chart right now, I can see that where I bought was around the weekly pivot point. You guys know I love this pivot strategy. It's amazing. And again, I would love to share more of my charts with you. Maybe I'll be doing that on the Instagram. So please follow for that. But anyway, so on my chart, I can see that there's a weekly pivot right around 75.70. And it seems to be following that pivot as a really good resistance mark. A few days ago, it was down off the open, hit the pivot, bounced, hit the pivot, bounced. So that kind of movement is a perfect pattern for my trades. So I'm not concerned at all, that right now it's taken a little bit of a turn at the end of the market. I do have a buy order in at 74.75. My target sale is actually going to be 78.70. How I came to that number is looking at the previous highs of the day. So along with the pivot strategy, another strategy I follow on my charts is really looking at what have been the lows of the day and what have been the highs of the day. And that can really help you find resistance and turning points. So that's why I would pick that point to sell at 78.70. I will sell a small piece at 77.80 just to make a little bit of profit, and then I don't mind waiting until it gets to that higher target. So that's what's happening with ATVI. I am excited about that swing trade. And as I mentioned before, the other swing trade that I am watching is going to be NCLH. So we'll see what happens with it tomorrow. I love that somebody just put something in the chat. So thank you, Dustin. That's awesome. And tomorrow, what to watch for off the open is just, again, those high volume stocks with a lot of movement. A really great resource for that is actually Yahoo. So Yahoo Finance, they have a bunch of great tools. When I first, heard about people following Yahoo Finance, I kind of felt like Yahoo's such an old company, but their finance news is actually incredibly on point, and ton of it is free. So in the Yahoo section, I'll probably put a link to it, but in the markets, you can see stocks that are most active. That's a really great list to watch because they have a lot of volume, so it helps you move in and out. It's not a surprise that as I pull that up, NIO is one of those stocks. This has been a very hot ticker. I know that people have been trading this stock like every day and making great money. I will consider looking at this stock off the open tomorrow, especially because it has everything I'm looking for, a big spread. It has the volume. So right now it's trading at 44.83, around there. And I would look for it off the open tomorrow to bounce down to 41.82. So if it bounces down to that level, I'm going to put a buy in just in case for tomorrow so that I can grab it at that quick bounce and then sell it up top near the 46.59 area. So that's definitely going to be a stock that I'm going to be watching tomorrow. And tomorrow, there's no live stream, but I will be, putting the podcast up since I record the podcast Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So thank you guys so much for watching on the stream. Thank you for listening to this podcast, and stay safe. I'll speak with you tomorrow. Awesome. Well, that's the end of the recording of the podcast. You can listen to the Are You Green podcast across all platforms, Apple, Spotify, etc. Said that a million times, so sorry about that. Something else that is really neat to keep in mind for people who really want to have a conversation is to go ahead and send me a private message in Instagram. I'm also, as I mentioned in the top of this video, going to be allowing people to record questions, and then I'll play the question on the podcast and answer. So again, last plug for my Instagram, it's Are You Green Podcast. It's been awesome to see that account grow in just a couple weeks, and I can't wait to talk to the podcast tomorrow, and then I'll see all of you on the live stream on Friday. So thank you so much. Trade safely and take care.